Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ruth Estrella. I am doing for forum number 2 for practice and theory of translation. Today I'm going to speak about the difference between an interpreter and a translator. Well, interpreters work with the spoken and sign languages, while translators work with written languages. If you need, for example, to translate something that is written, then you're going to need a translator. But if you want to work with the spoken and sign languages, you certainly will need a interpreter. If, for example, you need to translate or arrange a face-to-face meeting, an appointment, a phone call, or anything involving spoken communication, certainly you will need an interpreter. There are differences between interpretation and translation. The main ones are, for example, the first one. I always gonna say the first one, referring to interpretation, and the second one or the last one as translation. Okay, so the first one is spoken and the other one is written. The one is on real time versus the other that is delayed, because when you are an interpreter, you just have to listen what the person is saying and then say the thing that you heard immediately. On the other side, the translators have the chance to look for dictionaries or consult their books or make more consultations, so it is delayed. The level of accuracy. For example, when you are doing an interpretation, you listen and then you think about how to say that thing immediately. So sometimes it is not as you don't say all the details, but when you translate, on the other hand, it has to be really accurate because you have the chance to look for more information and write whole sentences, so do it written. Directions and fluency. Something else is that when you are an interpreter, you need to know both languages pretty good, because you need to understand and also you need to know how to say things, considering all the variables. You need to have very, very good fluency. Being an interpreter also needs to be, you need to capture another items like, for example, intonation, the voice quality, and other intangible elements of the spoken word, and convey those meaningfully to the audience so they can understand. Translators have to know analogies and idioms, and so that's also quite difficult, but they are different. Okay, then it is important to determine the specific need of a customer. So if he or she needs an interpreter or you will recommend someone that has a recommendation, someone that is accredited, and someone that is professional, so someone that has studied for that and someone that has experience. And someone that is also familiar with the general subject, because being an interpreter, you need to know the terms and the specific words for certain different kind of subjects. For example, if somebody calls me to be an interpreter to work with doctors, probably I'm not going to be a good one for that, because I don't know too much about medicine. But maybe if they call me to do something else about administration or math, I will be good. So the person who makes interpretation needs to know about the subject, the vocabulary. Also, they need to be really familiar with the culture and of the original language and of the target language, because you don't want to sound gross or to do something that is inappropriate when you are trying to make two people that don't understand each other with your work. So as a translator or also as a interpreter, you need a really, really huge amount of words. So your vocabulary needs to be good. You need to know how to express your thoughts clearly and accurately, because maybe if you are not clear, people will misunderstand things, and you don't want that. And of course, your client doesn't want that. So in order to have the best performance possible, interpreters have to be aware of some things. Like, for example, they need to be aware of what are they gonna be talking about. because maybe if they don't know, they're gonna do a really bad job. They also need to know where to sit down or where to be, so they are not a barrier between the two people that are actually speaking with each other, even if you are in the middle. So what I recommend is the person that needs to be on one side, not in the middle of the people, and has to have a really good tone of voice appropriate for the situation. Um, you also can recommend the customer to use his or her own language skills in certain situations. For example, the person knows a little bit of English. You can recommend them to say good morning or hello, how are you doing? I don't speak English too well, but I'm pleased to be here. So the people that is actually will be talking, they can make like a they can be in contact with each other, yeah. So you don't the people is not gonna be talking to the translator, to the interpreter, because you are not you are just the interpreter. You are not part of the conversation. You are not someone that can give opinions or recommendations. You just have to be loyal to what the person is saying and just try to do the best translation or the best you have to try to be the how can I explain it? You have to be loyal to what they are saying, okay? So customers must address and make eye contact with the person he or she is talking, and not with the interpreter. So you try to be out of the way and make them talk to each other, even that you are the one that is doing the information transfer. There are 5 types of interpretation. The one is simultaneous. So what is that? So the person, you hear the person or the interpreter listens and immediately say what he has catch from what he heard. Yeah, usually people use headphones, to listen, and is simultaneous. It is usually used in big conferences or that kind of political meetings or that kind of thing. Then there is the second one that is a consecutive. It is when the speaker stops for a while and then let the interpreter speak and say what he had here. Then there is a whispered, that is when it is usually used in small target languages audience, and the interpreter whispers a simultaneous interpretation. Then there is a relay one, that is number 4. It is when, for example, the person has to do the interpretation to the first language. How can I explain you? For example, the speech is in French, yeah? So the interpreter translates that into, well, not translates, but interprets that into English, for example, to a group of interpreters who the same interpret that to another languages, for example, to English or to Spanish or to Japanese. So there are more people involved in that kind of interpretation, okay? So that's what I could say about the difference and what is what. Translation and interpretation. I find that very, very interesting, because sometimes people can think that it is very important, or can think that it is very easy to do that kind of thing. But even now, for example, only thinking your own ideas, it can be difficult to express yourself in another language, even in your own language. So being an interpreter must be very, very hard, because you don't have to translate, but you have to be really quick with your ideas and your thoughts, so you really transmit what the first person is saying. And really interesting job, because there probably a lot of responsibility, and more than anything, a really important conversation, political conversation, or where people want to get to agreements, economical agreements, or job interviews, or that kind of things. So I think it could be very, very interesting to work in that kind of thing and show your capacities, but also a challenge, because you need a lot of vocabulary and know about the culture of each language, excuse me. So I think that's it, and thank you very much the opportunity that you give us, teacher, to read really interesting articles and to learn more and more every time. So bye to everyone and see you